Welcome to another episode of Ask Dubey. It's been a couple weeks, but as always, this segment is a presentation of Bet365. Whatever your bet is, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Download the app and get in on the game. Use the code NATION, Bet365. Must be 19 or older. Please play responsibly. All right, let's kick things off. Not a lot to talk about on the Oilers front other than mostly players they've lost, unfortunately, and we know when you go on Stanley Cup runs, there's a lot of movement, a lot of guys moving out. Obviously, it was a pretty special playoff run, so it's tough to see some guys go. Connor Brown, Corey Perry, obviously had an incredible Stanley Cup playoffs and was a beloved guy in Edmonton as well. And then you got them freeing up salary cap space with Arvidsson and Kane. So a lot of movement out, not a lot of movement in for Edmonton, so there's not too much to talk about there. We'll have to keep our eyes on it. If they're interested in Nikolai Ehlers, and obviously the goaltending situation. Nothing has happened yet. It's a tricky situation. We'll talk about that later in the show. But where do you go? There's two options. You either get somebody to push Skinner and play with Skinner because Skinner is still young and he's essentially going into his prime. And he's been to back-to-back Stanley Cup playoffs. He's got more playoff experience than the vast majority of goalies in the NHL. So there's a lot of upsides still with Stuart Skinner, and he is going to continue to improve. There's no reason to think he won't. So do you bring somebody in who's going to push him as a 1A, 1B scenario, or do you go after a bigger target? And that becomes difficult as well when it comes to salary cap and also who you're giving up to get that. Obviously, there's interesting names out there, Jeremy Swayman being one of them. John Gibson's gone now, but that would most likely involve Skinner going the other way, as well as some bigger assets. So it's really, the key is making a plan, and that's the GM's job, and they come up with a plan and decide which direction they want to go. And it's been quiet so far. I think they will do something. I don't know what that is, if they're going for a big splash or not. But that's the really two options. You bring in a 1A, 1B, or you make a big splash and Skinner's going to be going the other way. So we will wait and see. Maybe by the time this airs, more will happen, but a lot of sitting and waiting in Edmonton from all of us to see what moves they're going to make to fill out the roster. All right, let's dive into some questions here. First question is from Aaron. Hey, hashtag Ask Dubey. My boy is about to start his U14 AAA season. What do you think about playing hockey in the off season, and how much is too much? He plays baseball also. Also, he's growing a ton and was wondering if you had any tips for stretching/strengthening during growth spurts. Great question. And it's a tricky one because I do think there is too much specification at young ages with hockey, with sports in general. And I think it's very important that they play other sports. So it's good to do summer hockey and spring hockey and training, but there's two sides of it. One, they need a break. They need a mental break and get away from it. I don't like playing hockey 365 days. I know growing up, and I think even at the NHL level, there's something to be said about the excitement to start a season, coming into the fall, knowing training camp starting. That's your season. That's your trial. It's building up to it. And when you start to get in this 365-day cycle, there's no break to it. So these kids are just constantly playing hockey. Tryouts come around, training camp, season comes around, and it's just continue to roll into it. And I think it becomes, they might get a little jaded from it, and there's not the excitement there. There's nothing wrong. They're not going to forget how to play hockey if they take a month off or just do some skating here and there. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And if you're mixing in other sports, which is extremely important, again, harder and harder to do nowadays because all of these other sports, if you want to play a high level at any sport, they're expecting you to do it year round and have a full commitment. And that's what makes it so difficult. So if you are able to juggle and do both, but I think it's important, let them play summer sports. If he's a great baseball player, let him play baseball and then just have him touch the ice once in a while and you can build up closer to tryouts. But he's going to gain skills in playing baseball, whether it's baseball, soccer, lacrosse, anything that you want to do in the summer. Let them play summer sports. They're kids. Let them enjoy other things. And they're also going to gain all of these other skills that are just as important. Hockey players are usually some of the best all-around athletes because we've played multiple sports growing up, and you don't want to take that away from them, especially with hockey. It's such a unique sport to play. You're standing on 3-inch stilts. If you're a player, you're bent over to one side all the time. And if you're a goalie, you're holding your hands like this and turning your shoulders. So if that's all you're doing all day, every day, your body is not going to be overly athletic to do other things. So all of these skills that we get from other sports are extremely important, and they will help you not only on the ice, but mentally, for the kids to have a break from the rink, from the ice. They're not going to forget how to play. You can still do things in the summer. When you talk about strengthening and stretching, yes, there's lots of things you can do. If your boy's growing, of course, you don't want him in the gym lifting a bunch of weights. That's not good for the body, especially when it's growing at a young age. You don't want a bunch of heavy lifting or anything like that. But lots of things, lots of plyo work, speed work, especially the way the goalies play now. It's really important to strengthen through the core and through the hips, because the way they play the RVH and they're down in the butterfly all the time with wide butterflies and pushing around low, getting that strength and flexibility right all the way through your core and your hips and your knees is extremely important. So obviously I can't demonstrate or show you any exercises, but again, core strength, that's not just, when you say core, it's not just your abs, it's all the way around. Abs through your lower back, through your hips, all of that. It's not only going to help your performance, but it's going to help the longevity, when you're not going to have kids having hip issues going forward. That's the most important thing you can do. You don't want the kids to be in their early 20s and be looking at a hip replacement or hip surgery or anything crazy like that. But the way they play now, it is just more and more important to strengthen that area through flexibility, because there's just a lot of stress and a lot of pressure on those joints and those muscles in your hips and knees and low back. So those are things that you can do all summer and all season. And there's lots of exercises kids can do sitting in front of the TV. You have your basic stretches, and then you have your stretches with strengthening as well you can put them into workouts. There's lots of things that you can do that are a little more intense that you do in a workout. There's also lots of things that they can do sitting in front of the TV instead of just melting into the couch. If they're watching a show or highlights or whatever, they can sit on the floor and stretch, do some easy hip strengthening stuff. There's lots of things that you can do that way. So, resources are readily available. I'm sure if you go online and look at some different, try to find goalie specific stretches and stuff, but really important to do, especially the way these kids play nowadays. All right, next question is from Danger Suede. This is a good one. Who is the one goalie he wanted to fight the most? That's a great question. I didn't always want to fight guys. If I could pick a guy, it would be Jordan Binnington. I don't think I'm the only one on that list. And the only reason is, listen, I got nothing against Benner. He's a great goalie. He's won the Stanley Cup. He's won 4 nations. He's a great goalie. I don't like his antics. I got into it with him a little bit in San Jose, but that was nothing really. I just don't like that when he gets involved, it's always because he's playing poorly. It never seems to be genuine emotion. It just seems to be a little bit of a tantrum throwing thing because he's not playing well or things aren't going well in the games. And it always seems to be nicely timed with the referees being there. I would have loved to see the Flower get after him. And listen, I'm not saying that Binnington isn't willing to go. I just haven't seen it. And that's the thing, is I'd really like to see it with all of the antics and the getting involved and the talking. He's bumping into guys, going to the bench. He's just a lot of stuff for having 0 fights on his card. And so if you're going to act that way and act tough, I'd like to see him show once in a while, at least getting a scrap or two, or at least something that isn't just causing chaos when you're not playing well. And also he's not exactly built like a fighter. I don't know if he is or isn't, but he doesn't weigh a lot. So I'm going to guess he's not a fighter. But anyway, that's my reason for Binnington, is just, again, I was an emotional guy when I played. I slashed a lot. I got into it once in a while, so I know what that's about. But with Benner, I just see a lot of antics, and mainly when he's not playing well. And I've never actually seen him truly get involved in a skirmish. It always seems to be a lot of talk, a lot of rat moves, a lot of pushing, bumping on the way to the bench and TV timeouts and all that kind of stuff, and which is fine, but eventually show us something. And so I'm sure I'm not the only guy on the list that Binnington would land on. I certainly hope I don't land on anybody's top of anybody's list. I don't think I would, but I'm sure Benner lands on a few guys' lists at the top as well. There's also a list of guys that I wouldn't want to fight. The late Ray Emery would have been one of them. He was a killer. I would have not wanted to square off against him. And then Robin Leonard as well. I used to always try to chum it up at the red line and in warm-ups with Leonard. We always had great conversations, a couple pad taps, make sure I was on his good side in case things went sideways in the game. He didn't skate down and want to string me out because he was a big boy. He was as big as me. He was heavier than me, stronger than me. And I know he liked to fight. He was the opposite of Benner. He was ready to go, willing to go, and enjoyed doing it. I think he trained in mixed martial arts in the off season. So that was one guy I just tried to stay buddy with before the game. So if anything went sideways, he wasn't chasing me down, although he might have been anyway. And fortunately, I didn't have to find out what would happen if that were the case. On to the next question. There's some good ones this week. This one from Trevor Livenuk. I don't know. I don't think I said that right. But this says, regarding the topic of goalie regression discussed earlier, that was obviously a different show. What are the primary factors contributing to a decline in performance among younger goaltenders? Is it more a matter of wavering confidence, recurring injuries, or perhaps an initial over-evaluation based on a single strong season? Examples include Alexander Georgiev, Jack Campbell, and Vitek Vanacek, and I'm sure there are many others. This is a great question, and there's multiple answers for this question. You basically hit every single option there, both with the goalies and with what can happen. There are goalies that have off years that are playing, and it's just an off year. Not every goalie is going to have a great season every year. And then on the other side of it, there are times when goalies put together a great season, and that's not sustainable for either their ability or where they're going to be playing next. All of these things come into play. So that would be a situation where there is an overvaluation of the goaltender. And this is where kind of all the statistics and everything come in, where the only way you can see this coming is you have to have a longer period of time. You have to have consistency over time and seeing this stretch, and not just have you been consistently a backup goaltender and then 1 year you took off and had a great season and then you regressed. Well, that to me is an overvaluation of somebody who just happened to have a career year. But realistically, if you look at his career, he's not that goalie. Now, on the other side of that, if you've got a guy who's consistently a starting goaltender, a good starting goaltender in the league, and he's playing extremely well and he has a down year, well, that's just a down year. You have to look at the total career, or if it's a shorter career, you have to look at the amount of work that he's put in and what does it look like. And if that down year is an anomaly, then there's probably a pretty good chance that he's going to come back and be back to where he was. So if I'm looking at an Alexander Georgiev, to me, that was a bit of an overvaluation, where he played really well in New York, but was back up there. That's kind of where the trade came in. He wanted to be a starter. He felt like he should have played more, but he played really well in his role in New York. He goes to a really strong Colorado team, plays pretty well, but doesn't get them to where they want to go. But that's a very good Colorado team as well. And obviously in San Jose, it was tough sledding there for anybody that went through there. So you can't really blame him for performance there. But I think with Georgiev, it's more of a finding where he actually fits. And I do think he's a good goaltender. I think he's an NHL goaltender, but is he your answer as a starting goaltender? Probably not. And then we're kind of starting to see a little more where he falls as far as, is he a 1B? Is he a good backup? Kind of that scenario where I think there was a bit of an overvaluation there with him coming out of New York. Jack Campbell, don't want to say anything bad about Jack. He's a great guy. He's loved by his teammates. This is an interesting one because the question is obviously way overvaluation on his time with Toronto. If you just look at it and look at his style of play and the way he plays, he's still a great goaltender. And that's what's interesting to talk about is if he wasn't now for longevity in life and setting him up for financially, he's not going to complain because he's got $25 million in the bank. And that is important he's got his whole life ahead of him. But I can promise you, he misses playing in the NHL. And so it's interesting to think if he didn't get that contract that he got with Edmonton, would he still be a backup goalie in the NHL? Would he still have a job? I would say probably. I would say that contract probably cost him a spot as an NHL goaltender, but it also put $25 million in his pocket. So, once he gets past his career and gets over that part, it's a nice, really nice chunk of money. He'll enjoy that going forward. But I'm assuming right now, he'd really like to be in the NHL and as a teammate and a hard worker and he was a good goalie. He probably would fit somewhere nicely in a backup role, but unfortunately that contract doesn't allow for it. And then you have Vanecek, who I think has potential to get back to being a really good goalie. That's the other side of it, where he was really good. I think he is very good. And if he's one that maybe will get an opportunity to get back to that and get up to a higher level, I think he's a very good goaltender. We'll wait and see, but I think it was just a little bit of a down time for him. And then also situationally where he's playing and what's happening in front of him, I think that's one that has potential to get back to a higher level. So there's so many factors that you have to look into. Also, like I kind of just mentioned with Vanecek and also Georgiev, is where you're playing, because nobody's going into San Jose the way they were playing and doing anything. Look at Mackenzie Blackwood, how well he did going to Colorado. There's just only so much you can do, and hopefully for San Jose they can improve a little bit that way. But you have to look at all of these factors and past performance and all these things, and then it's up to the team to try to decide. I guess gamble's not the right word, but are you going to bet on him getting back to where he was, or is that more where he is? And that's what the team's jobs are, and that's why they make the big bucks, to make those decisions. Okay, next question from Raymond. What would you do if you were Stan? Lots of people are down on Stu, but I look at his age and sheer ability to mentally reset and worry we regret not sticking with him. Does replacing Schwartz improve things? I recommend the goalie coaching firm of Dubey, Smith, Rowley. We don't have a goalie coaching firm of Dubey, Smith, Rowley, but that's definitely a great suggestion. I might have to reach out to those guys and see if they're interested. But it's a good question. I mentioned a little bit at the top of the show. There's really two options here. Is you go with somebody, you go get somebody who is somebody who can push Skinner, who can possibly take over the starting job depending on play, if Skinner's not playing well, or you make a big splash and Skinner's going to be going the other way. And that would be, and possibly more assets to get somebody who you believe is a starting goaltender that can take you all the way. Like a Jeremy Swayman that I mentioned earlier. And listen, I don't even know if he's available. I don't know if Edmonton's even remotely interested in him. That's just something like that is your other option, and also becomes more difficult to do because much more assets and Skinner have to go the other way. So listen, with Stuart Skinner, I know everybody's down on him. Not everybody. I'm not down on him. This is a guy who's 26 years old, who's been to back-to-back Stanley Cup playoffs, who's got more playoff games and more playoff experience than the vast majority of the league. And he's a very good goaltender. He's shown us that. And at 26 years old, he's just getting into his prime years as a goalie right now. There's no reason to believe that he is going to have any sort of regression. With Stu, I think he needs to find a way to gain consistency. That's really what everybody's kind of frustration is the inconsistencies throughout the year, and then obviously inconsistencies in the playoffs. And there's two sides of it with the playoff situation. Now it's 2 years in a row that he's had to come out. Pickard's come in. Pickard's done an incredible job, but Stu's gone back in and taken over. And listen, just that right there, his mental ability. I've talked about it lots this year. He did it last year, different situation. I think it was an easier situation against Vancouver the year prior, to come in the way he did, because it was kind of like just a break, knowing he was going to come back in. And so he was a refresh and he was ready to go. And he came back and he took him to the Stanley Cup Finals, played extremely well. This situation, I think, was way more difficult for what happened. He did not play well in the first 2 games. The team did not play well in front of him. I don't think it mattered who was in net in those first 2 games. They weren't going to win those hockey games. But we know Pickard comes in and becomes local hero, does everything and more you could ask of him, pulls the others back out, takes them all the way through, and then gets injured. So now you have a guy who's 6-0 and is like a local hero, and now Skinner's got to come off of the bench to get his starting job back. And then in the first game, they lose with 0.4 seconds left. It could not be going any worse for Stuart Skinner at this point. And what does he do? He comes back in and elevates his game and plays well, back-to-back shutouts, which is just crazy. That is honestly one of the most difficult situations I could conjure up in my head to put a goaltender in, and he responded and got to the Cup Finals. So if you want to look at 2 games in the Cup Finals and say that maybe he didn't play as well, or the Cup Finals, that's fine, and that's true. There's merit to that. You want to see him step up and win one now that he's been there twice, but I think the only way, you don't give up on Stuart Skinner. He's 26 years old, and the amount of experience he's had and shown his mental ability, and he's a great goaltender. You don't give up on Stuart Skinner, and trading him for somebody big is not giving up on him. It's just deciding that you're changing directions. As long as that asset coming back is a big asset and is going to be your starting goaltender, that's not giving up on Stuart Skinner. It's just moving on, not suggesting, you're not trading him away for a 5th round draft pick because you think he can't play anymore. That's obviously not the case. That would be the only way you move on from Stuart Skinner. The problem is it's an interesting situation because Calvin Pickard did everything you'd ever ask of a guy in the playoffs. He's 7-1, took the guy, did everything he could do. So anybody else you bring in to, if you're going to replace Calvin Pickard, is if you're bringing somebody in who is going to be a backup to Stuart Skinner, and that's his role, why would you do that? Why would you take away Calvin Pickard for how much he's loved by his teammates, how hard he works, and what he just did in the last playoffs? You can't bring somebody in to move him out who's just going to be a backup goalie to Stuart Skinner. You have to bring somebody in who is equal and is genuinely has the ability to push for a starting role. And if they play well enough, can take over the starting role and have that battle 1A, 1B between the two of them. And come playoff time, you've got 2 guys who can take you all the way. That's the only thing. I don't think they should replace Pickard just with another backup goalie, because he's like I said, he's a hard worker. He's done everything he's asked, and he's loved by his teammates. But I think it's a very, very risky to just run it back, because they could go all the way to the finals again and lose in the finals, and people are just getting more and more pissed off each year that if goaltending becomes an issue there, that they ran it back the same way 3 times in a row and didn't get it done. And obviously a hockey hotbed like Edmonton, most passionate fans I've ever been around, they want to win and they care, and they don't want to see the same tape rewound and played over again this coming year. So difficult situation, because all this stuff is not easy to do. There's a lot of moving parts, the salary cap, assets to trade, all of these things. But I would be surprised if they did nothing. I would be surprised if they started the season with the same tandem of Skinner and Pickard, but we'll see. Does replacing Schwartz improve things? I don't think it's fair to look at a goalie coach and say that getting rid of a guy isn't going to improve things. He's been there for a very long time, and we all know with coaches that's just the coaching carousel. That's any sport in general. Like, sometimes you need a new voice, and you need somebody else to come in, just a fresh voice, a fresh take, a different look, whether that's off ice or a different look at some things on the ice. It's important to make changes sometimes at coaches, and I don't know why all the hate on Schwartz. Again, he's got a young 26-year-old goaltender who was thrown in the net to be a starter at a very young age, and he's played well. So I don't think that you look at a firing and say, oh, everything's going to do a 180 right now because they fired the goalie coach. The other day, the goalie coach is not stopping pucks. He's not in the net. He's not getting in front of them. It's not going to change that much. Although, if you get the right guy in there, especially at Skinner's age at 26 years old, if you get the right guy in there, he can also shape his entire career. And I think more than anything, it's just important to get a fresh voice in there now, maybe some different ideas on different situations, ways to play the game, and maybe somebody different to talk to in between games on the mental side of it, and have a different sounding board. So I think that's really it. I don't think you can look at it as having Schwartz gone is going to stop more pucks. Obviously roundabout maybe, but it's just more of needing a fresh voice in there. Well, that's it for another episode of Ask Dubey. Thanks for the questions. We've got a couple that we put in the bank too for later on. Lots of great questions. Please keep them coming. Hashtag Ask Dubey on all social media platforms, or drop your question in the comment section below on this video. We'll be doing it every other week throughout the summer, so keep the questions coming in. It's been a lot of fun, and we will keep doing it. As always, this episode was brought to you by Wilhauk Beef Jerky. Only the finest tasting meat products earn the Wilhauk name. Made from 100% pure Alberta beef, Wilhauk Beef Jerky is aged, seasoned, marinated, and smoked to savory perfection. You can find their beef jerky, sausage, and other products exclusively out of their Leduc location, or you can order online. Get your jerky on at wilhaukbeefjerky.com.
What's up, Nation citizens? If you like that video, then you need to be subscribed to the Oilers Nation YouTube. Podcasts, live shows, exclusive interviews, and analysis. Everything you need from your favorite voices at Oilers Nation. And you don't want to miss any of it, so hammer that subscribe button.